Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another exciting podcast interview. On today's show, we are going to be talking with the company that could be considered the pioneer of customer data platforms for automotive retail at Tier 3. It's not who you might think. It's with the team at Cox Automotive, and to have this conversation and look into the future of automotive retail, I've invited Jade Terraberry. She's a Senior Director of Strategic Planning, and Brendan Reardon, the AVP of Sales. Let's get into it. Jade, welcome to the show. And we've been talking about Cox's investment in data. We've used other words, and you're going to be coming to the Modern Retailing Conference to really unveil your Omni-Channel data and activation strategy. When you say Omni-Channel, what's the message you want to communicate to dealers?
Brian, dealers need to know that consumers have this desire to do a little, a lot, all or none of the steps of the sale, online, in-store, back online, self-guided, self-controlled at their own pace. And they also expect, which is no surprise to any of us, that every step they take along the way, they want it to get them one step closer to their desired outcome. And as you mentioned, we have built Cox Automotive as a multi-billion-dollar CDP. It has been really hard. It's taken us a decade plus to get there. And over the years that we've talked about, we have the biggest identity graph of anybody out there. We have trillions of buying signals and vehicle data points that we collect on a daily basis. But it didn't really make sense until dealers have now started to understand what a CDP is. It's a tool to help them find efficiencies on how they activate audiences, both known audiences and unknown audiences, people who don't know them yet but are ready to make a purchase or take a step in the ownership cycle for service, repair, maintenance, recall, warranty, etc. And so what we have done at Cox is finally connect all of these dots in a way that puts tools at the consumer's fingertips as well as the dealership staff's fingertips to make that journey and those communications more relevant, more actionable, more efficient, and less expensive with each step that they take.
It's interesting. We've been talking about connecting the shopper journey on AutoTrader, KBB, connecting the shopping journey on the thousands of dealer.com websites. But we've come to a time now where dealers understand what an audience is, a real-time list of people who are in market for sales or service. They understand identity graphs now, that when someone comes back to the website, we can know who they are and personalize the experience. Brendan, when you're talking to dealers today about Cox's investment in data and now dealers' ability to tap into that for personalization, messaging, contextual conversations that are relevant, marketing, what gets dealers the most, excited about the potential as they partner with Cox Automotive?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having that information, right? Straight up. They right now, if they're not looking at these buying signals, everyone's looking at it as a regular lead, right? All of a sudden now they look at a person, Brian Pash comes in and we understand that he's gone out on AutoTrader and he's looked at different vehicles. He's actually maybe gone into My Wallet. He's gone in and put down payments or what his actual buying power is. He's gone into KBB and listed his trade, tried to get an understanding of what he can get for his trade, right? And then maybe he's gone to DDC and gone further down into the program to understand that vehicle and reach out to the dealership. All of these things, that's the excitement level that the dealers have. Because now all of a sudden, Brian Pash to them is not just Brian Pash, he sent in a lead. He's Brian Pash, and he's already made his journey available to them so they can actually work with them and collaborate with him to purchase his vehicle.
You know, Jade, I understand today better than 2 years ago all the work that goes into building a CDP, all of those inputs, the normalization of the data. And most dealers who go down this road get a little overwhelmed. They're like, wow, I don't have anybody on my staff that can do that. So Cox has taken the initiative to build the largest identity graph for shoppers for sales and service. And then I hear comments like, yeah, but they haven't really invested as much money in VIN solutions. And that's so far from the truth. Can you talk about AMP inside of VIN? Because I want dealers to understand that, yeah, they may have a CDP project going on. It may take years for them to do what you've already turned into a turnkey solution. Let's talk about data activation with inside of VIN solutions.
Love that, Brian. And we actually, in our panel with you at MRC, are going to frame these things in that format. Here's the dealer pain point. Here's the investment and connections that we have made. And here is the real world of what sits at your staff's fingertips. Or here's the real world of what AI and AMP and these tools that re-engage consumers with real-time messages based on the most recent thing they just did. And it's even bigger than Cox platforms now. It's not just AutoTrader and KBB, which you're going to see an overhaul of all of the the differentiation of what consumers do on Kelley Blue Book versus AutoTrader coming early next year, and what they do on dealership websites. But you're going to start seeing all of these tools and connection points that we built syndicated across the automotive ecosystem. We're going to be powering other marketplaces. We're going to be syndicating more of My Wallet so that when a consumer is penciling a deal on an OEM website or on a user authenticated experience with their bank, logged in, looking at loan terms and options, that those things from My Wallet are pulling in, they're landing in VIN Solutions in the consumer profile. The dealership staff member, and I've heard some dealers say, in fact, you've told me this, some of them say, hey, I couldn't give all of that information about a consumer to my salesperson. They wouldn't even know what to do with it. That's not an excuse anymore. The consumer expects it. The other thing that we're seeing that is really relevant here is that consumers are starting out casting this really wide net based on the vehicle of interest and the price. But every touch point along the way, and depending on the age demographic, it may be 15 touch points, or it may be almost 200 touch points from click to close. And they're weeding out dealerships in between. It's not weeding out cars for the most part. It's weeding out who has a consumer profile, like what we have in VIN Solutions that says, here's everything that consumer has done. Here are the deals that they've desked with you. Here are the deals they've desked with your competitors. Here are all of the penciling scenarios that they have given across the whole ecosystem. And that way your staff has that as they're working the deal, or with a tool like AMP, that's automated messaging that is taking every one of those real-time touch points, updating the messaging. It's the holy grail. It's what CDPs are for. But like you said, what dealers have found that have spent now lots of time and money over the last couple of years trying to build their own, this is not easy. Just the data governance and consistency and normalization, that's one huge part of it. But then you have to have all of these activation layers on top of it that make it real and make it something that at your dealership staff's fingertips, or your marketing director's fingertips, or your advertising campaign's fingertips can update it in real time to find efficiency, because efficiency is the name of the game. Make every dollar go further and make every minute go further. And that's exactly what you're going to see in VIN Solutions that we're going to show some real world examples at your conference coming up.
Love that. You know, I want to say for dealers specifically, and there's a lot to digest. And that's why coming out to MRC, you could sit down with Jade and Brendan and the team and really get some additional insights. But let me just say a few things. I agree with Jade that in today's economy, you can't afford to have people responding to customer leads if they're not going to use all the rich data that's available to them to have relevant conversations. Listen, the first person who answers the consumer's question with relevant information and facts that feels like they're one step ahead of them to make it a fast, easy, and transparent solution that's going to win the deal. We know that, but without all these buying signals, with all of these shopping history, it's really hard to have a relevant conversation. Number two, we talked about AMP's role in filling in the gaps. People go on vacation, they get sick, people are overwhelmed, somebody quits. Every day, there are interruptions in the automotive sales process, in the automotive service process. And with the power of big data, with the power of a unified customer profile, these gaps can be filled automatically. And what does that do? It makes your staff more efficient. It makes your customer retention increase. This is the power of unifying your first-party data. But there's more to that. And, Brendan, I want you to talk about another exciting piece of this omni-channel environment for people who are bought into the Cox ecosystem regarding Deal Center.
Deal Central, yeah. So
Yep.
Deal Central, this is a scenario where we've been looking at this from two perspectives. One is the consumer perspective, right? And then the dealer perspective.
Right.
We've done a ton of studies, obviously, but on the consumer side, Jade had talked about it a little earlier, the expectations are high, right? They're really high. So we started to look at this, and in a couple of our studies, 83% of the consumers out there expect that they're going to have an easier transition because of all the work that they've done online to buy a car. 78% of them think that they're going to have better transparency because of the knowledge that they already have. And 88% of them think that it's going to be a faster and their experience, and they're going to save time with the dealer, right? So when we looked at that, we're like, well, we really got to change this. We got to change the way we're looking at this. We cannot continue to go down the road of the traditional way of selling and taking care of our customers. So we built out Deal Central after understanding, from AMD on the digital retailing side and e-commerce on the full scenario where the consumer is actually purchasing all of it, doing all of it by themselves. They're somewhere in the middle, and that's what Deal Central is. Okay.
Got it.
And Deal Central, so what we do with it is we look at all of the actual consumers, whether they're walk-ins, whether they're phone-ups, whether digital retailing are coming through, whether they're buying signals like we've been talking about, or they're in service. And we have to meet them where they're at and have a collaborative platform. And what I mean by that is the actual consumer and the salespeople are collaborating to actually put the deal together based on the insights that we already have. And what we're seeing from it, Brian, is that the consumers are engaging. They're really appreciating the transparency and the efficiency. They believe that they're actually buying instead of being sold to, which is a huge deal for consumers. And because of that, the experience has been really good for the dealers as well, because they can actually have people that maybe aren't as tenured come into this and walk through the process with the consumer and be really good at it. Really good at it in the fact of just taking them through the process and showing them the options. They actually are going into more service contracts. They're going into looking at things that maybe they wouldn't have looked at before because it's just laid out for them and it's more consultative. So we're super excited about this. It's changing the way people, the dealers are really working, putting a lot more into the salespeople's hands, but most importantly, giving the control or perceived control to the consumer.
Jade, you mentioned efficiency. I'm talking to a lot of dealers who, the bubble has burst post-COVID. People have to get back to selling. Margins are tighter. And some brands are still having challenges with inventory. And I think if I hear one thing over and over, Brian, we're in cost cutting, we're in driving efficiency, and we need to do more with less people.
Yes.
Doesn't that play into this platform that you've been building for years, that instead of spraying and praying with marketing, you could target people who are actively on KBB, actively on AutoTrader, actively on a dealer.com website. So marketing can be more efficient. Instead of spraying and praying with email blasts, we could do one-to-one email marketing based on where that customer is in their life cycle and shopping signals. Instead of when can you come in, responding to a lead, which gets ignored, we can have contextually relevant responses, even AI suggesting some word tracks that would be most effective. But it's all powered by data. This unified customer profile, the identity graph with all these shopping signals. No one has anything as large as Cox Automotive. Is this what's driving a kind of a renewed push to go all in the Cox ecosystem?
Well, it is. And, swivel chairing in a dealership is tough. It's been the reality as more and more tech and tools and software and all these cool things have come out. And we have done it too. We've had to roll out a lot of these capabilities on parallel tracks to building out the foundation that connect all of it. And I'm going to make a couple of clear points here that we've talked about a lot over the years. What happens on your virtual lot is the most direct indicator of what's getting ready to happen on your physical lot. So that's
Amen.
how you manage your day, manage your inventory, manage your people, manage which leads they're spending the most time on, because it's people that are at, the lowest place of the funnel, either for purchase or for service or maintenance or recall or warranty. And then you have this scenario also of efficiency, which is the most important thing any of us can be looking for. But understanding market share is just as important, because with these inventory fluctuations that we're seeing, and we're going to continue to, these natural disasters that we've just been through, the
Right.
off-lease shortage that we know the inventory impacts are going to last for at least the next 6 quarters. And so some of those things may actually give some relief on margin compression or give a redo to OEMs that maybe have flooded lots again with inventory that's starting to get aged. But it really is how dealers use this real-time data, market data, to understand, are they winning or losing market share? Because just because you have more or less vehicles than you had this time a month ago or a year ago or 4 years ago, that is no longer the measurement of whether you are winning or losing.
Right.
The next point is that we said for so long, our listings platforms were the best. Leads closed at the highest rate. We had the most quality audience because we could put the right shopper on the right car at the right time because of this personalization engine.
Right.
That is no longer enough. This next step, it's not only that we can do it, but we're arming every dealer, not just, the new forms and the publicly traded and the large groups, but all the way down to a small independent and everywhere in between on the spectrum, to use that real-time data on an even playing field to serve the consumer with the right message via the right channel, with the right either inventory or brand or why buy messaging and content with the right CTA, land them back in the right destination, and then power all of those follow-up communications, whether, like you said, it's what your salesperson sees and knows to say from looking at that consumer profile in VIN, or what AMP is automatically serving out to them to get them one step closer to what they're trying to do with you. And it's the dealers that are using the power of that technology. And like you said, we're years ahead, and we have failed through many of these things that we've tried and tested and learned. And we are finally more excited than we've ever been to rip this Band-Aid off. And Deal Central is really it. A great example of that is, we had AMD, Accelerate My Deal, and then we had full e-commerce, totally automated. The consumer never has to see or touch anybody in the dealership. And what we found is dealers want all of those steps in between.
That's
Consumers want all of those steps in between. And so Deal Central is this assisted communication platform that you can use on your showroom floor. You can use it from the consumer sitting on their couch, and it keeps the control feeling that the consumer wants while giving the dealership the ability to do more with less. It takes your 25 car a month guy to a 32 car a month guy. It takes your 12 car a month guy to a 16 car a month guy. And it's happening in real world. We'll give some of these examples at MSRC and MRC. And what we're hearing from dealers that are doing this in showroom, they say when you hand it to the consumer on an iPad and they have the control and they're self-guiding, their aftermarket attachment rate, their F&I profitability is higher. Like every time now. It's mind-boggling even to me. You know, I was a finance director for years. I've spent more time in dealerships than I have on the corporate side of this, which is why we can finally see all of these dots connecting and working. But it's 100% about efficiency. And all of these tools now, if you are all in on Cox, you find it on every single front, from the inventory management, the consumer management, how far your advertising dollars go, how you can measure and make real-time decisions, manage your people, have your people do more with less. And that is what we have worked so hard to bring to market. And we're here.
You know, for the dealers that are listening, I'm going to say something that may seem controversial. And I'm not saying it just because I'm interviewing with the Cox team here for today's podcast. But in the future, dealers are going to have to change the way they buy software. In the past, it would be, hey, there's a new CRM. Everyone loves it in my 20 group, and you just buy it. Or, hey, there's a new marketing tech platform. Oh, I heard it was good. And they would buy it. And for years, dealers have been satisfied with Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat, a patchwork quilt of different products, because no one understood the value and opportunity when you have a single identity graph, when you have audiences built in real time, when you have enhanced data signals that can influence every piece of the ecosystem. I think in the future, you're going to see dealers say, look, yeah, that CRM has one or two little cool things, but I'm getting all this rich data from my integrated ecosystem. Yeah, that company has pretty cool email templates, but they don't have the personalization engine that's driven by data. I think we're going to see more and more dealer groups realize that them being the CTO and trying to figure out the best way to do retail is probably a fool's errand as we get significant efficiencies through identity resolution, signals when customers are back shopping, signals when consumers are out looking for service. These insights only come when you're working from a data infrastructure. And Jade, I don't know if you see it that way, but there wasn't a reason for people to buy all into an ecosystem because the pieces weren't connected. But now I think at MRC, you're going to be able to demonstrate what a connected retail data first mindset can do for increasing opportunities. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Brian. And the other challenge that I think so many of these mid-size and larger groups that have tried to make these independent investments, or there's a valid point that we can talk about also. That's like, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. That's scary. However, when you look at how big the foundation and the even just rollover servers, and understanding how deep now these integrations run and how strong the systems and technologies are behind them, but also to realize with technology moving at the speed of light, keeping these things on the front end, cutting edge of the technology that is out there and available, it would be impossible for a dealership group or an organization. You can go build it, and before you even have it built, it's antiquated. And so, that's really why you even asked me for years, why is Cox not building a CDP? And we just kind of winked and said, if we do our job and it all comes together the way we're planning on it, you don't need one, because we are one. Every single activation that you want to do on top of it. And let me say this too, because it's a really important point. One of the directions we're going with this, yes, it will be more efficient if you are all in on every one of our systems, but we're also really focused on making a lot of these pieces product agnostic. So,
Great.
if you're with an OEM that has a, a proprietary or, a piece of digital retailing technology embedded that they're
Which is
requiring that
common
you
now, right? Which is
that's
common.
right. That's exactly right. We have built the hub in such a way, and you've influenced that. The same way ADF XML became what dealers use, auto lead data format. We're now building the deal structure in that way so that the inputs that come from every type of online buying signal now go into this ecosystem. And yes, if you're in VIN, you can action on it faster. And if you're advertising with us or your OEM's advertising with us, this tier 1 to tier 3 advertising connectivity goes even further to activate those audiences in real time. But we will always be making investments to stay at the front end and cutting edge of all this. It's why nobody can catch up at this point. We have taken a really long time, but to get that one view of the customer, one view of the vehicle, one view of the market, one view of the dealer, and then be able to connect all of those pieces, it is hard, and we're excited and can't wait to share it with you at MRC.
Well, for the dealers that are listening, I want you to understand that we are really at a tipping point. I think dealers are understanding the power of data, the power of identity graphs or identity resolution, the power of real-time marketing. I was just talking to a colleague of mine, Jim Kazabuki, and he said, Brian, we have to get the vendors away from thinking of batch files and I'll wait for the end of the month to do a batch email or a batch direct mail. We're in real-time retailing, ladies and gentlemen. We need to change our mindset. The only way you can do real-time retailing is through a connected ecosystem that can activate a text or an email or a direct mail piece or a task in the CRM or a task to an outsourced call center. Real-time retailing is the future, but in order to do that, you need an omni-channel view of the customer, and you need to have a data infrastructure that allows for that to happen. And that's why dealers should be coming out to the Modern Retailing Conference, because this is the place where we're talking about things that come to fruition years ahead. We are in a point now that what Jade and I talked about 2 or 3 years ago is a reality. And now with AI accelerating insights to customer communication and timing and cadence, now that we have more first-party data APIs that can enhance a customer's, retail process, this is the conference to attend. And I just want to encourage, we only have dealer and OEM tickets left. It's in beautiful Palm Beach at the O Hotel, 17th, 18th, 19th of November. And I can't wait to just share with the dealers my excitement of the time that we're in. We are in a data first action plan. We are in a real-time retailing reality. And of course, certain players are ahead of the game because they've seen the vision in advance. And, Brendan, I'm really interested as dealers come up. They've been frustrated with digital retailing tools in general because it felt like it's forcing consumers to do something that they didn't want to do. They just wanted to be able to come in and out, of a deal structure anytime they want. So I think it's going to be a great time for you and the Cox team there to show what Deal Central can do to change the way that consumers feel about buying a car. You in alignment with that thought?
Yeah, I'm completely in alignment with that thought. It's very interesting. When we initially brought out Deal Central, everybody was like, oh, this is just part of DR, right? No, it's not part of DR.
Right.
It's not. So we had some educating to do, but there's about 15% of the deals are coming through DR, but most of them are coming through those other avenues that I talked about earlier.
That's right.
And we have to make sure that we have an efficient process and the same process, as close to the same process as possible in every one of those environments.
That's right.
So the dealers, it's challenging because it's a change for them, right? But what we're seeing is the dealers are really engaging on that and starting to understand, okay, so if I really start to change my process to Deal Central process and have it consumer centric, here are the things that are going to come from that.
Yes.
And that means way better engagement
Yep.
with the consumers,
Higher
and
profitability,
higher
Higher
profitability.
profitability. Yeah.
which is the magic, right?
It is, and it's I'll tell you, we've had a couple of sessions with our customers, summits to help us understand more of where we should go with this, right? We've got to listen to the dealers as well as the consumers. And what we're seeing is the engagement level, it might start off simple based on their culture. But when they get into it, they bring it all the way across, all of it. We have a number of dealers that are doing the same process now for each. If a person comes in on a lead compared to a service customer, working from home, coming into the dealership, all the same process. And that's where we know that they're going to have a better way of doing business with their consumers.
Yeah,
Because the chasm, if you will.
yeah, when you think about it, every McDonald's has the same POS system because it allows people to go through the process. And I'm not comparing McDonald's to car dealerships, but for the multi-billion-dollar industry that we're in, having different sales process depending on how people enter into the dealership never made people feel good, because they felt that maybe there was less transparency in certain methods, or I'm coming to the dealership unprepared, I'm going into the lion's den. I like the idea, every study that I've done working with dealers who have one process, regardless of where people enter in, and a consistent walkthrough. I think also dealers, when they understand the power of the data they get from that as well, and how their effective central master customer record can help guide those conversations if you're all working off the same playbook, I think that's going to help sell it. And that's why I'm so excited about the panel. I'm excited that Cox is really going to show dealers the solutions to pain points using their omni-channel platform. So thank you for supporting dealer education. Thank you for working hard to find those efficiencies for dealers. And we're going to be talking about it at the Modern Retail Conference. And if this is the first time for our listeners that are hearing one of my podcasts, you should know that there are dozens of interviews leading up to the Modern Retail Conference. So I encourage you just to go to my podcast channel and listen to all the interviews so you get your mind set on the companies you want to talk to and the people you want to meet. And please make sure you send someone out to your dealership who's, well, in charge of the future vision of what retail operation looks like, because that's what the Modern Retailing Conference will be talking about. Not stuff 2 years ago or 5 years ago, not remedial, but revolutionary changes in automotive retail. Jade, Brendan, thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to seeing you in sunny Southern Florida. And for everyone who's listening today, thanks so much for listening in, and I'll catch you next time on another podcast interview.